72 now, I'm Ruth Harlan, living quietly in the rolling foothills outside Roanoke. That gray dawn in late autumn, I loaded the old cedar chest into my station wagon and pointed it north toward Charlotte. Inside the chest, 4 leather-bound ledgers from the 1950s, filled with my late husband Daniel's meticulous hand-drawn blueprints, early designs for suspension bridges, mountain viaducts, remote highway alignments he charted before anyone believed the terrain could be tamed. He'd given them to me the week before the cancer took him, whispering they were our story in lines and numbers. I'd kept them wrapped in oilcloth ever since. Our son Garrett had always begged to see them as a boy. He'd spread them across the kitchen table, asking why one span curved just so, why Daniel had penciled Widowmaker Ridge in red beside a particularly treacherous contour. I thought the engagement party for him and his fiancée would be the perfect moment to hand them over, a quiet passing of the torch. I hadn't visited in 5 months. Our last conversation was clipped. He sounded distracted, said they were keeping things intimate. I didn't push. Parents learn not to. When I pulled up to their sleek townhome in a gated community, the porch light was already off. Tessa answered the door in yoga leggings and a cashmere wrap, smile thin as January ice. Ruth. Hi. No embrace. The party was last night. The words landed like wet cement. Last night. She gave a small shrug. My parents flew in unexpectedly. We moved it up. Figured the drive would be too much for you anyway. From the living room came soft music, the murmur of voices, the pop of a champagne cork. She stayed planted in the doorway. May I see Garrett? Just for a minute. His resting. Long night. Maybe call ahead next time. The door eased shut. Not slammed. Just closed. I sat in the car until my fingers went numb on the wheel. No one appeared at the window. No text arrived. The chest waited in the back seat like an abandoned promise. I drove until exhaustion forced me off the interstate. In a roadside motel outside Wytheville, I opened the chest on the sagging bed. Daniel's precise ink lines stared back at me. Every bridge a decision he'd fought for, every note a piece of the man who once held my hand on scaffolding 30 stories up. Garrett had stopped asking to see them years ago. I'd kept hoping the curiosity would return. It hadn't. By morning the hurt had cooled into something sharper, resolve. I turned south and drove home. The house felt different when I stepped inside. Less empty, more mine. I returned the ledgers to the locked cabinet beneath Daniel's drafting table. Then I brewed coffee and opened a letter that had sat unopened for weeks. The Blue Ridge Engineering Archive, a small nonprofit museum in Blacksburg, had written again. Their curator, Dr. Miriam Cole, had learned I held some of Daniel's earliest private work and wondered if I'd consider loaning it for a permanent exhibit on mid-century infrastructure pioneers. I'd always said no. It felt like losing another part of him. This time I dialed. Miriam answered warmly. We spoke for 40 minutes. She understood what those pages meant, not artifacts, but breath. She promised careful handling, digital preservation, and my name on every label if I wanted it. I agreed. 2 weeks later I carried the chest into their climate-controlled reading room. Miriam's team handled each ledger like rare glass. No one mentioned auction value or resale. They spoke only of context, of legacy, of the men and women who once believed a pencil could conquer mountains. Driving home, the Blue Ridge Parkway looked different, less lonely. I began noticing other things. The $18,000 I'd quietly transferred 3 years earlier when their startup real estate venture nearly folded. The $31,000 bridge loan for property taxes they'd never repaid. The weekend cabin Daniel and I bought with my teaching pension, deeded to Garrett 8 years ago for the family. A mutual friend mentioned in passing they'd flipped it 18 months later for a tidy profit. Then the wedding invitation arrived. Ceremony only. No reception. My name typed at the bottom under extended family. No +1. No note. I opened the safe in the hall closet. Inside, the original deed packet for the cabin. Daniel had quietly filed a revocable trust 2 months before he died, naming me lifetime beneficiary with reversion to a scholarship fund if I predeceased him. The transfer to Garrett had never been properly recorded. Their paperwork was built on sand. I called a quiet estate attorney named Paul Grayson the next morning. Paul listened without interruption. Within days he confirmed. The cabin's title remained in my name. The LLC they'd formed, H&G Holdings, had no legal claim. They'd used it as collateral for a commercial development loan now in default. I didn't confront them immediately. I waited. The eviction notice came after the wedding. 60 days. I gave them 90 out of habit, not kindness. They left in early spring. Tessa taped a curt note to the fridge. Hope you find peace.
Garrett paused at the door.
You didn't have to do this.
I didn't, I said.
You did. After they were gone, Daniel's cousin Owen stopped by.
He carried a sealed envelope Daniel had entrusted to him a decade earlier.
Inside, a second trust document, executed quietly, transferring full ownership of the cabin back to me should any future conveyance prove invalid. The final sentence in Daniel's careful script. If the day comes when our boy forgets who held the transit steady, remind him the view was always ours. I framed the letter beside the drafting table.